where does retaining good staff start? Is it a case of just paying them loads of money, or is it something deeper than that, like culture and other stuff like that? Talk to me.
I think it's obviously quite a lot deeper. I think, listen, money's important. It's a little bit like when you go, if you're going to go and value someone's house. Yes, they want the best price for it, but they also need the right buyer. So they need to know it's going to be the right person to work for their timescales. It's the same with work. There's no point saying people are going to work for free, but I think, I don't even think it's difficult. People just want to be valued. They want to be respected. A very foolish thing to do in a estate agency, especially in my early days in the corporate career, without knocking all corporates, would be to try and work out your hourly rate. Because you don't just work your 9 to 6, it's the kind of the time you do afterwards, the emotional baggage and everything you do. And I think a lot of, the team, they work really hard. And actually, yes, they want remuneration, but they just want someone to say, well done, I see you, I see what you've done, and I appreciate it, thank you. And that's the way. By the same token, it's not about retaining them for your benefit, for your greed. It's about retaining them if it's right for them to be retained. If you go into it, that at some point they're going to outgrow. You can either grow as a company with them, or they're going to outgrow you and want to leave home. And that's down to you, and it's down to them. But we have a policy. I have a view that nobody ever needs to leave me for culture, because they can come with me as an office junior. We can work all the way up, and if they want to start their own business, I'll start one with them. So I'm never going to have it to a stage where someone feels they have to leave me because of culture, because of the way they're treated. But things change in life. But I think that's the other thing. When we say retention, it's a bit like I need them because they're going to earn me money. But actually, you want to retain them when it's good for them, but allow them to fly if the time's right.
I think there's a lot of layers to this onion, and there's so many different things to consider. But when it comes to culture, we have values, but these values also have to align with beliefs. A value that you can't believe will never be your culture. So that's something that's really, really key. But one thing that we found helps massively on top of all of the training, internal, external, is almost like the massive transformational purpose that we have. So we look at trying to be a humanity plus kind of business. There's humanity plus businesses, and there's humanity minus companies. So having a mission that sort of adds value to the world ensures that you're a humanity plus company. And a business that has that kind of meaning and purpose attracts other people to be their very best and come on a journey with you. And it's exciting and it's inspiring. So people want to be on a massive journey. The bigger the goal and the bigger the mission, the more exciting it is, and the easier it actually is to achieve because of that. So that's also very, very key and doesn't get talked about enough.
I think somebody that you work with who leads you, you want to be inspired. And I think we're talking a lot about what the company wants. I'm listening to at the moment, the company has a brand and a style and an ethos. I think one of the bits that we need to be really good at as leaders is, what does our individual staff member want? And I think colleague, team member. I normally use the word team member. What does my team want? What does my individual team member want? I've been in a position in my own career where I remember my boss saying to me, "You're a square peg in a round hole. What is it you want?" Because I was doing new business sales. That wasn't really my skill. I liked account management and business relationship. And I think an awful lot of the time it's about making sure that you understand what your individual staff members' objectives are. There are people who move from sales to lettings, or admin to sales, or lead or become managers, but that's not really what they want or what their goal is. So how much do we listen to them and their objectives, I suppose, is where I'm coming at it from.
I was just going to say, I totally agree and mirror what everyone else has been saying. And I got it wrong for so many years. It probably took me over 10 years to get it right. And I think I'm just about there now. And one of the things I used to do is I used to employ people for the task and not for their values. And I found when I...
Can I just jump in here? If you don't mind me saying, up until I don't know when you had your epiphany, which I think was a couple of years ago. I'm not joking, you boys and girls out there in estate agency land. Zoe, it was a running joke in my head. Who the hell has Zoe got rid of this week? Because it really was a turnstile, wasn't it? You were just, it was new members of staff just constantly.
Yeah.
When did the penny drop, and what was the penny that dropped? And what
do you know? It's funny.
I obviously agree with a lot of that. It's very refreshing for Zoe to say that it took her 10 years to get it right. I think that's quite a good thing to say live, and well done for doing it. But so I'd agree with a lot of the stuff about culture. But the thing that I see both as in the consultancy side and recruitment, is that one of the biggest issues with retention is actually retaining people that are not on culture longer than you should. So for example, if you have somebody that's not right, but you are bestowing and talking to everybody about these cultures, but for whatever reason they might sell more houses than anybody else, they're able to get away with things, that actually makes other people leave. So sometimes who you hold on to will affect adversely your retention or your attraction. And people don't often get that bit. They're talking about the vacancy and the person who's left. Well, look at the bigger picture sometimes, that the environment they're in is also their colleagues. And often there's one or two real bad apples in there that are allowed to exist, typically because they perform, but they're killing everybody else while they do it. And you need to identify those people and get them off the bus pretty quick.
I think if you don't, it takes a big person to admit they've made a mistake, and sometimes as you know, the boss, you're expected to know everything. But I actually think it helps to with retention. Sometimes if you say, look guys, I've made a mistake, I'll hold my hands up, because if you show that you're happy to admit you've made a mistake, the team will show that they're happy to make mistakes as well. And while you have to lead from a position of authority and power, sometimes you have to show some vulnerability. People need to know you're human. So I think actually by saying to the team, look, I got that one wrong, it's on me, I'm sorry, you'll actually find it'll give you kind of, another chance.
So we are the same, we recruit on values first, and as Ian said, it's about resolving that quickly rather than letting it linger. But one of the things that we found has really helped us with retention, particularly of the good staff that we want to retain, is asking everybody the same set of questions on regular one-to-ones, including some difficult questions which quite often as leaders you don't necessarily want to hear the answer to, but you have to in order to address things. So things like, one of our set questions is, what's not fun about working here? And how happy are you working here from 1 to 10? And what would make you never want to leave? And if you can get that, and they have to answer, and you get that direct feedback, and that's across the board, every single person in the business, and it shines a light on the things, the areas you need to improve to retain those staff. And also if people aren't happy and they're not a good cultural fit, then obviously you can take action after that.
I was going to say the same thing about the one-to-ones and how well do you communicate with your team? Do you understand what their objectives are? The other thing I'd like to bring in is how clearly defined is their role? Now, often there's a risk that I have a role in my head and I think that's what I'm valued for. But the role that my boss or my leader thinks I'm valued for can be different. So I think that communication, whether it's in a one-to-one or clearly defined roles, targets, whatever it may be, that's the best way that everybody's singing from the same song sheet, to coin a phrase, because that's where problems can occur. I've left a job myself in the past because I didn't think I was performing. And you often think, well, I'm not doing very well, I'm not very good at this, and you leave. I bumped into that boss a few years later who said, we were really sorry when you were left, you were brilliant. Well, I didn't know that. And I think you forget how you talk a lot, Chris, about how listers are very sensitive and we hate rejection and failure. So I think that element of clearly defined roles, praise and reward and recognition is really important.
I completely agree with pretty much everything everybody's said so far, Chris, but just taking a point, Charlotte brought it back to the individual and what are they thinking. I wonder how many of our audience actually have, every 6 months they'll have a company survey which really gets into the detail of the behaviours of the board of directors, whoever it may be, as well as their colleagues, to really to get to understand each individual, each facet of this business. And that's something that I think would be worthwhile looking at. And as a business, we link our performance against our core values, be that customer focused or innovative or supportive or sharing knowledge. So teams are not just rewarded on the result, they're also rewarded against their behaviours as well. Which I think is also quite important. And as Vicky said, there's so many different layers to this great big.
Yeah, I was just going to say, obviously, with the crazy times that we've been in, a lot of people working from home, some are still working from home, sort of almost over communicating or having the ability to communicate regularly to your teams wherever they are. I think in estate agencies or in bigger groups, there are a lot of these kind of big monolithic meetings that might come together once every so often. It's not really the most effective way of doing things. Obviously, these Zoom calls you can jump on. In our case, we have these town hall meetings on a monthly basis, but also having the use of sort of modern day channels like Slack is slowly finding its way into some estate agents. It's a notification tool like WhatsApp. It's a sort of WhatsApp for business, I would call it, in an organized fashion. What it does is it really opens the flow of communication, and you can actually start sharing information and people can passively absorb it as well. So it's not just noise. That's where I think the difference is with WhatsApp. But having channels that are designed for specific conversation, ideas, issues, announcements, celebrations, it just makes people feel, I mean, I know, Vicky, I think you use it, don't you? I know Heather does. It really does, and I'm sure others do, really does pull a team together and make you feel you're part of it and you've got a voice.
I think just following on from what Ben said, engagement's really key for us, because I think the more engaged your employees are, the better they're going to enjoy working there. So we're really keen on encouraging friendships and social groups. And from a comms perspective, we use Workplace by Facebook, and that just keeps everybody engaged and encourage everybody to recognise when somebody does something good and encourage those thank yous. We do things like wow cards just to give everybody a bit of a pat on the back, and that visible recognition from a colleague and as maybe a senior leader is what always works well, and people feel really proud.
So I think what we've largely found is actually the job itself is actually quite a minor consideration. Like, in terms of someone fulfilling a role, there's quite a technical success or fail with that. That's the attitude that we take with most of the roles anyway. So we hire on personality and attitude, and as Zoe and others have said, you can, if they don't have the experience, you can very quickly train them. I think we try to focus on things outside of the role. So something we've done at Base ever since we launched is we close over Christmas. We've always said it's something discretionary based on how the company performs, but we typically close every year for nearly 2 weeks, and we don't count that as holiday against any of our staff. So again, we give our staff that opportunity to completely decompress for about 2 weeks and shut off without taking a mandated holiday out of their annual holiday allowance. Another thing that we've done is we try to understand with our staff, I think Charlotte raised this earlier, is we try and understand what people don't like about their job. And typically what we find from that is actually when you dig down into it, it's typically something that can be fixed. It's typically something in your process that you're not doing right, or it drives you to go out and find a product like Slack, that resolves that issue. So I think we try and look at that side of things, and then we also look at what people's objectives are outside of work, because I'm a true believer of we work to live, we don't live to work. So really, what you do at work, great, be committed, but that's not what we're all put on this planet for. So we try and understand what informs and motivates people outside of work. So the only example I can give of that is during the first lockdown, when we furloughed a couple of staff. The staff that we furloughed, what we went to them, the proposal we gave to them when we furloughed them was, we're happy to pay you the full salary, so we'll pay the 20% top up on top of the government 80%, on the condition that you do at least one course whilst you're furloughed, and we mandated that shouldn't be anything to do with property. So one guy did a video editing course, another member of staff learned how to do jewellery and ended up starting a dog accessory jewellery business, and actually ended up leaving our company to pursue that business. And whilst right in the instant she gave notice, when she came back, there was mixed emotions. Actually, I was really proud of the fact that we gave her the opportunity to pursue something that she's now still pursuing 2 years later and doing really well at. And yes, we lost a good member of staff, but we found another good member of staff to place them. And, we've had several employees over the years where we've done what's right for the employee rather than what's right for the company. And in the long run, it all pays back. I'm a true believer in karma.
Yes, I suppose I'm kind of thinking ahead to what we're talking about as well. That we've talked about culture, we've talked about understanding what your team member needs in terms of what is their job role, but also what are their obligations, what are their objectives, and what is our development plan for them as well. So I think part of retention is development, and obviously from my point of view in terms of training and qualifications, who wants to be qualified, who wants letters after their names, who wants to join the membership body, who wants to be the networking person who goes for coffees with landlords in the area. What are we doing to develop them as an individual, as well as recognising their role and their concerns, I suppose?
Yeah, just quickly, just to kind of echo what Christian said there, just about the lady that would start their own business. So I have a saying with all mine that I'm more interested in happy human beings than I am in a property manager, a negotiator, etc., etc. So we do one-to-ones religiously every month. Thankfully, I've got somebody scheduled for me because I'm useless at admin. But I kind of like term it more of just a happiness one-to-one. So we'll obviously have targets and figures, but we make a note of the kind of where they want to go in their life. And every month, we'll just check in and say, is it still where you want to go? Is it still what you want to do? But I also say to them, and it depends, you know, some will take you up and some won't. It's words. If they're ever unhappy, they have just come to you and say, I'm not very happy, you know, and you say, well, we can either fix it or I can find you somewhere else to be happy. And, you know, I work with a recruiter, and I say, they all know her, and I say, you have a number. If you come and tell me, I'll put you with that, and I'll give her my blessing to find you a new role. And I think when your team know you're not just trying to keep them there, when they know they can come to you with anything, and worst case, you're going to help them find someone to be happy, I think that makes a big difference.